Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's August 1st, 2019. I'm out near the first food forest. Actually, pond 3 is to my right, to the left of the screen, and pond 4 is just to my left, your right side of the screen. And today I thought what I'd do is share a little bit of a walk through part of the first food forest. Now, we have two main food forests that we started and that are at various stages of maturity. And I thought what I'd do is put my helmet cam on with the GoPro camera mounted on the front of it with a little microphone and see how well this video turns out. And so I can share with you some of the challenges, some of the mistakes that I've made, some of the failures in my design and upkeep of the first food forest. So I'm going to put my helmet cam on and we'll go for a little bit of a walk. Okay, I've got the helmet cam on now, and just to orient you, the central garden is right over here, workshop, house, eastern garden plot, the elephants where we go through the canal, the bioremediation canal systems. All along this canal system over here out in front of us is all asparagus. You could see there have already gone to flower and starting to go to seed. There are some weeds there. At the base, previously in previous videos, I've planted white clover, and that's done pretty well along in there. And there's a Honeycrisp apple over there. That's just one. This is its first year. I planted this last fall. This is one of the hardy kiwis on this pergola here that I transplanted last fall. That's one of the cuttings from one of our hardy kiwis. The bridge goes across to one of the grapevines on that pergola over there, and we won't talk about all the stuff over on that side. Here we've got one of our cherries, the mulberry tree, another, there's a peach over there, catawba here, one of our mulberries that I did from a hardwood cutting here. This is one of the Illinois mulberry trees, cherry tree. So these cherry trees here are a couple of years old, and one of the things I'll talk about is the aspect of how I treated the soil. In this area here, some of the soil that we're walking on right now is some of the topsoil that came out from the woods where the pond 3 was put in, and we'll just walk behind the gazebo here. And so here's pond 3 over in this area. There's a sitting area over there, canal systems coming in and waterway systems coming in rather. An island in the center for the wildlife. And we've got lots of supportive plants planted around, and herbs and various food sources. This is hyssop, tastes like licorice, pretty nice, and it's just growing in here pretty abundantly. Some of these, when these start to come up next spring, I'll transplant out into various areas of the various food forests as well. We've got an apple tree here. I'm sorry, that's a Santa Rosa plum. And I'm always looking on these Santa Rosa plums, and indeed this is one that I picked up from a box store, and I could see some black rot on this one. So I'm going to be discarding this tree as well. Here are a couple of the original trees that I put in probably 13 years ago. This is one of our apple trees. It really has never been a big producer. There's lemon balm here, honey locust, certainly horseradish down in here, a pear tree here, more horseradish, more lemon balm here, and here. Is that lemon balm? Yes, lemon balm. Here's our large plum that has the black rot. In previous videos I talked about the black rot on this one. For several years we really produced abundant crops of fruit that we canned and enjoyed tremendously. And it's one of the Santa Rosa family trees, and it doesn't have the resistance to the black rot. So I think I'm going to end up taking that tree out. Unfortunately, I took out the other two Santa Rosa plums that I had brought in previously that really brought in the black rot to this property, and that's a shame. So, and on the other side over there, there's another, that's actually a peach tree there, and an apple tree, and another apple tree on the other side over here. Here we have some aronia bushes. These are Viking aronia, and what's the other one there? I'm not sure what the other one is. This is a pawpaw, some oregano at the base of these plants as well. An apple tree, another aronia, another pawpaw here, right up next to the pond. This area, this soil isn't too bad, but every place else that we're going to be walking through now has been area where we leveled out some of this gravel, coarse gravel area. Actually, I'm standing right here now on top of a large stone wall. So this stone wall I removed probably 30 years ago. Let me see if down in this area here. Some of the stones, since the trees had grown up around the pond here, I just covered up with wood chips and planted on top of them over in that area. But this area was all pretty harsh gravel all out in this area. Really coarse, bony stone. And again, the stone wall came down here. And what I used was my front end loader and my dozer. Maybe it was 35 years ago to move those out. And then about 12 years ago, we leveled out some of the gravel that was here. And I put in about 6 to 8 inches of wood chips on top of cardboard throughout this whole area, from where the solar panels are, actually underneath the solar panels as well, all the way up to pond 3, right up in this area. And then I began planting some of the more mature looking trees that we see around here. And I tried to train them in such a way, such as this peach tree here, so that they would have an open vase conformation, and they were high enough that I could get underneath them with a riding mower, and the limbs would be strong enough that that they would support the weight of a pretty heavy fruit-bearing season. But this system that I put in probably is not the best system. So one of the things I'm always looking for is the angle of the limbs where they're coming out and the height at which the limbs are coming out. Because we have this area completely open to wildlife, and the deer come through this area and browse day and night, there's a significant chance for trauma to the trees. So the deer will easily reach up about 5 foot high and nibble at that height and just gobble just underneath the surface. I'm not sure what had happened here to damage this limb, but one of the things that I'm always looking at, if the angle is too close, is too narrow, then what we do is we get some of the bark being embedded between the two limbs, or the limb and the trunk, and then as those limbs mature, the amount of bark embedded down in deeper becomes more and more, and that's a place for water to get in there, water to freeze and separate over the winter time, for heavy loads to actually put a lot of pressure on it so it could separate it. And so I'm always looking for something that's like, this is almost a 90-degree bend at this location, which we have bridging bark. It's going across the surface of it, as opposed to embedded bark. And I'll show you some areas. So this area here would concern me some, because it could be embedded bark. So always trying to see, will this angle support the weight, and is this an entrance point for disease to get in between these limbs of the tree. And one of the things that I've learned over time is that this is not an ideal open vase shape. It would be much better if I were to have, like this, either 3 or 4 main branches coming off from the main trunk of the tree, but at different levels. So in other words, having like this limb coming off at this level, and then this limb coming off at about this level, and then this limb, and each going in different directions and all. But this is what I decided on initially, and it did work out pretty well, but I wasn't adequately, since this is open to the deer browsing, it certainly was susceptible to deer rub. And as you can see, here's an area that was damaged. And one of the things I'd like to do, and this is basically one of my sacrificial peaches, and the reason I say that is I don't really care for the flavor of these peaches. One of the things I thought about doing was coming and cleaning up the edges here of this to see if I can get the cambium layers to start working the way across again, instead of coming to an abrupt edge, cleaning these up and seeing, could I get this wound to close better, or potentially just removing this limb. So this is one of the peaches that I probably will start doing some grafting on, some heavy pruning and grafting, and just seeing what I can get out of this tree. The same thing with this apple and that apple there. That plum, unfortunately, I think I'm going to end up replacing. At the base of, so there's comfrey all over the place. So here's one of our apple trees here. So there's lots of comfrey at the base of this apple tree, and there's horseradish over there as well. And here are a couple of problems with this tree. So one, I haven't come through and thinned this tree, thinned the fruit, really too much fruit there, much more chances for damage to happen. This is actually a delicious apple here. I haven't come in and pruned appropriately. I've got many water sprouts, and I'm not sure that that's visible. Oh goodness, with this helmet it's a little tough. So I've got all of these water sprouts, and now I could go ahead and try and train these in case there's limbs that I wanted to try and replace. But all these vertical shoots that are going up are just taking more energy and put it into vegetative growth, as opposed to taking care of the fruit. And certainly I should be thinning this fruit as well. And I'll give you my excuses, I'm just too darn busy. But this is one of my problems. And again, this was, even though most people would think of having an apple tree and not having it be like a vase like this in a sense, but I pruned this one too late. These limbs, these branches that came off here, I should have taken these off earlier in life so that they wouldn't have so much work trying to close up these wounds. I certainly should have had each one of these limbs come off at different heights. And I'm not afraid of doing it a little bit higher. I was thinking about when I, excuse me, what I was concerned about when I decided the height at which I would have these limbs come off. I wanted to make it so that when I get older, I'm not having a really challenging time getting up there and harvesting the fruit, and less chance of injuring myself. But I've subsequently realized that it's probably much better for the health of the tree to train the tree appropriately, having that main trunk coming up, and then in all 4 directions, let's say north, south, east, and west, having 4 main primary limbs coming off the trunk at various heights on it in each direction, and then thinning those limbs as time goes on. But again, this is a lifelong project, me learning about this whole process. Some of these bushes that are around the sides here are all hosta berries, bushes. The deer come through and they just gobble these right up all the time. More lemon balm here. The tree that I put in here doesn't look like it's survived, did it? No. I put in a mulberry here, or I put in a pawpaw here, and there's a mulberry over there. Another cherry here. We got plums, apricots, peaches, apricots, walnuts, and there's walnuts all down in here, cherries, plums, pluots in this area, and then on the other side of the white birch, several other trees like that as well. Here's something. So on this tree, you can see I've got some brown rot here as well. So that's another good reason to get in here and thin the fruit as well as we can. This is one of the newer trees. Which one is this one here? Flame Furry, a standard peach. I can't say I'm as pleased with my trees that I got from Stark Brothers this season. Several of them didn't leaf out, but this one's going to be okay. And one of the things that I would say is I'm of a different mindset than I was in the past when I first started putting in different food forests. So this is a couple-year-old grafted tree. So each one, and you could see it was professionally pruned. I'm sorry I've got this wire thing around it, but you could see the dead little limbs around the edges of it. But I think in the future, I'd much rather have a first-year tree instead of one that's come to this point, and then here I've got limbs coming off in different directions. Now at least I've got a couple of limbs heading in the right directions that I'd like, but they're coming off very low to the ground, unfortunately. And that will be the pruning and munching material for the white-tailed deer as they come through this area. So more of the new young trees here. Our blueberry bushes, these are our purchased high bush blueberry bushes. Unfortunately, I tried leaving this netting on this past winter, and one of the deer got caught up in it and tore it all up, and so it was all over the place, and it took me a while to pick it up. And then once I picked it up and it had all the sticks and twigs in it, I just stuck them in the gazebo for a little while. And then the deer came through and ate down all of the new growth on these blueberry bushes because I didn't get it back up on there. So again, neglect on my part. These are some of the native blueberry bushes that I salvaged from different parts of the property. So they're all over in here, more comfrey. This is another peach here. Which one is this one here? This is another one of the Flamin' Fir peach standard trees. And more blueberry bushes. Here we got one of our apples, a magnolia, and the honey hut. This one's one of my favorite apple trees as well. This is, I believe that this is a Candy Crisp. And again, look, I did not prune this. I did not thin this. So look at the weight of all the fruit on here. This is terrible. Really bad, Kevin. So I think I had mentioned in previous videos that this year was another, the last fall we had several, I think I had 7 hives that were going that were all started in the spring. And what ended up happening is over a 48-hour period last fall, all of the bees died, with the exception of maybe a couple thousand bees that didn't make it very long through the winter that we have here. So something's happening in the late fall. I'm not sure what the heck it actually is. The only thing I'm thinking about is some of the neonics that's coating some of the corn seeds that are systemically absorbed or distributed pesticide Could that be contributing when they come through and they harvest the corn and they basically pulverize the corn material? Is that causing some of the issue? It was right around the same days that was going on. But we had two swarms move in, one down at the second hive down there. These ones in this hive here moved in yesterday. Those ones moved in about 4 or 5 days ago, and these guys moved in about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago. So it's kind of nice. You build it and they come. The honey hut here, and there's videos that I posted in the past about the honey hut. More of the so this one's, here's one of the blueberry bushes that all the birds haven't gotten to all the blueberries on yet. And these are a little bit thick and they need to be pruned as well. So I'm behind on everything around here. So before I go over into this area over in here, this is an area that where the swale system, on the other side of the swale system is where the almond forest part of the food forest is, and so I'm not going to go over there today. But I did want to walk up these aisles and show you some more issues. Again, another beautiful apple tree. This is one that's absolutely delicious, and you can see the deer come through all the lower limbs, and they eat all the fruit and all of the vegetation off of the lower limbs, and that's okay with me. But again, you can see all these water sprouts all up in there, all those vertical shoots where I didn't rub them off when they first started coming up, and I've just gotten so far behind with all the things that I'm doing. Here's some more of the brown rot here on this nectarine. Man, this nectarine is a delicious one, and lots of fruit that should have been thinned, and now we've got some of the brown rot in here as well. So let's have a look. So you can see this is the conformation again. So this has 3 main branches coming off, and then what I wanted to have would be 2 to 3 other branches coming off from there, and then the fruiting branches taking care of their doing as well. I had pruned this during the winter months, not last year but the year before, and as a result got all these water sprouts that I did not nip off when they first started shooting up, which this tree would be really nice now had I done that. And again, in the future I wouldn't want all 3 of those branches coming off at the same location on the trunk. This is one of our ginkgo trees here. The bees love that tree. Now this is one of our deer rub trees that really took a terrible beating, so I'm going to show you several of these deer rub trees. So this is that nectarine that has some of the brown rot on it. It's been a really stressed out tree. You can see I've pruned it multiple times. This is one of the places the deer rub had ripped all in here, but this is embedded bark down in here. So this is just a location where these limbs have been growing, continuing to grow, where the bark has been embedded in between, and as a result there's some decay in here. So this is really a terrible example of poor planning, poor pruning, poor protection on my part for this tree. It's done a heck of a job really trying to seal up and heal these spots and all, and quite honestly, 3 years ago when the deer hit it the first time, I should have just heavy pruned it at that time, but I was afraid that I'd prune off the one limb that would do well, and I just let it go, and I feel terrible about it now. And but this tree has been productive each year and really gives us great fruit. But this tree I'm going to have to replace. Let's go over and look at another one of these deer rub trees. So here's another one. This was a gorgeous, and this is another one of those nectarines. And I think one of the reasons why I'm getting all this brown rot, yes, it's a ubiquitous spore. It happens as a result of some of the moisture as well. But I think one of the reasons is because this tree is struggling. These trees that have had so much damage to them from the deer rub, now this whole area was just ripped right down on both sides, and it's done a pretty darn good job of healing, and that's why I haven't taken it out yet. I feel terrible about just taking it out until I get, at least until I make sure that I've got some really nice disease-resistant varieties. But again, you can see just how terrible a job I've done maintaining these. And so this morning I noticed, oh my God, there's this brown rot. I've been over there working on the greenhouse, and unfortunately I've just neglected being a good steward for these trees. Now here's what caught my eye this morning. So this is one of my favorite trees. These are all here currants, and you can see the deer come through and strip them. And so again, this was another one of those deer rub trees. This limb came out and came right up over here where we're standing here, and it had such a heavy burden of fruit on it. And this is a blushing star peach, one of my favorites. What the deer do is they just grab a hold of some of these limbs and they just pull the limb right down, and when it's got all this fruit on it, certainly it's quite easy for them to bring it down and make it real easy for them to eat all of the vegetation. They like the vegetation. They don't really care for these peaches that aren't ripe yet. When these peaches are ripe, yep, they do go for them. So I got to come out and remove this limb. And again, another water sprout that shot up here, and always looking at what's the angle. This is too narrow of an angle to maintain, and now because I didn't remove this when I should have, now I've got a larger area for a wound to heal. And this tree has been through so much. You can see how much the damage the deer did to this in the past, and the bark has not made its all the way around here. Just completely ripped all the way up this tree. And this tree produces so much beautiful fruit. So again, this whole area was all originally gravel, heavy gravel, bony gravel. It had cardboard, probably in the areas where all the trees and the bushes are, I probably put 8 layers or 10 layers or 12 layers of cardboard and paper right in those areas. Wood chips below it, compost in that area, and wood chips on top of it. And then in between, good 8 to 12 inches of wood chips in between. Similar to what I'm doing over to the other location. Lots of, you could see when the deer, like these are the black currants here, I believe. And they grow up so big and so massive, it's just amazing. Now here's a dwarf plum. These are really delicious plums here as well. But this isn't a good location for these dwarf plum trees here. You know, I really wanted to have standard trees, semi-dwarfs, and dwarfs, and I just did not put this in the most appropriate location. This year I really let the raspberry plants go because I've got 5 rows, big rows. This is a smaller row, the original row of these, and more currant bushes here. These are the black currants here, those are the red currants. This is another one of the blushing star peach trees, one of my favorites. My favorite. You could see the deer have nibbled here, but again, I haven't thinned this tree appropriately. And right here is another really bad spot. So the angle here is just too close, and the bark is being embedded between where the limb takes off from the trunk, which is terrible. And here's where the deer had done deer rub, and the tree is healed up pretty well from that. But I'm going to create a big scar when I remove that, and I should be thinning this. Dang it. But I gotta tell you, I do love these peaches. locust tree, apples, blueberry bushes, more apples, more nectarines, plums and peaches over there. Let's go down. This is another peach here. Apple. What is this? What apple is this one here? A blondie apple semi-dwarf. And they call this supreme. You know, I just got to say, the leafing out has been pretty bad. These are all, one of the other things I'm doing in all the garden areas is I'm purposely trying to make certain that all of my trees are now being planted in mounded areas. So I bring in lots of compost, mix it in with the soil, create a nice mound, plant the tree in that location, and then heavily mulch it as well. Let's walk back down here, the ginkgo again. Now it's hard to see, well, let's try. So the solar panels are over here, and I've got to clean up underneath the solar panels. But this is my second area of where service berries are. And this is one of my swale systems behind there, but here's one of the service berries here. Just trying to get these big enough where I can ultimately uncage them and not have to worry about the deer. That's a Saskatoon, delicious. The deer are actually chopping them down to such a point now. I'll try and make another video about the second food forest and how I'm dealing with some of the high bush cranberry bushes up there. Some of our pear trees, now they can handle, the pear trees can actually handle some of these really narrow angle. Now this one doesn't feel too good, so this limb should be pruned here, but this one's actually okay. You can see it's bridging in this location, but I'd much rather have limbs that are coming off at 45-degree angle, and I've got separators to help me, but you know, really I'd like to open up some of these pears more than the way that they naturally are. Another one, and you can see the deer come through and they browse all the lower levels. The apple tree. This is another one of the new trees that really did not leaf out. Another flaming fir. Another apple. That's an Asian pear right there that did not leaf out. This is one of my apples, and what I decided to do with this apple was to try and see how well, if I left all of the lower limbs on, to help protect it from deer rub, but it did not help because I had a small spot of deer rub on this. No, that wasn't deer rub. I have another tree that had some deer rub. Maybe this one was one too. But leaving the lower limbs on, even though they're more of an obstruction for everything else going on. But the soil is really terrible over in this area, and that's why I'm trying to rehabilitate this area. So you can see I'm bringing in lots of wood chips in here as well. An apple, a persimmons tree here. This is another one of the Asian pear trees. This is one of the high bush cranberry bushes down here. Another apple. Another. Well, the battery just died in the GoPro, so I was talking longer than I thought I was going to. And I hope the video turns out. I'm going to go ahead and, if it does, I'm going to go ahead and post this. If you have comments or questions about what I've done so far during the description of this, if you want to see more of this food forest, I can try and walk through some of the rest of the areas of the food forest that I had intended on doing it. I'd be happy to do that as well. And if you think this video was of value, please give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends if you think it's of value. And by all means, folks, have a great day. Bye-bye now.